So, hi everybody and welcome back. This is our C++ tutorial series for absolute beginners. This is video 103, and in this video we want to talk about functions again, but more about strange things, what can happen and so on. Because sometimes we are surprised that something is not that what we expected. And normally the case is that we made an error. To be honest, we have to be honest with ourselves. Most time when it's not coming out what we expect, we made an error or we understood it not right and so on. And but the good thing is this kind of errors are most time easy to solve. You have just to research a little bit on the internet and look after these keywords and check answers, and you find this. This is the good news, but there is a bad news. Sometimes it can happen that you still can't solve it, and I want to show you here two cases, let's say strange cases which you not expect normally. And let's start. So first of all, before we start, I want to encourage you as well to use more Ide features. For example, Visual Studio here has some features which has other IDs probably too. And one feature is, for example, instead of all time clicking this one here one by one, of course you can make this one and then you see it looks very nice. Instead of clicking one by one, use a shortcut and click them, collapse them all together and open them all together, because that makes the life easier. And the shortcut here in Visual Studio 2090 is, for example, I write it here in component, you press Ctrl+CTRL plus M. Let's make it a little bit more visible. M, and then after again this one you press Ctrl again plus O. And this will, let's see what this will do. I make this now, Control M first, and then Control O, and it collapsed all. Okay, this command is collapsing all. And then you want perhaps uncollapse all again. So open up all again, and then you press here. Let's copy this line here perhaps. Make it a little bit faster, and let's make Control M again, but this time Control P in my case, uncollapsing, right? I make here an uncollapsing, is uncollapsing all. And now I test this. Now I press Control M first, and then I press after this one Control P, and you see it opens up again all. And this is a nice feature. For example, you have here a very long list, and then you press Control M, Control O, it collapses all, and then you jump to your main, you open this one perhaps up, you are working here with your main, and you can see the other functions. And you can do one more thing. You say, wait a minute, I don't want my main on the bottom. And we learned, of course, you can push all now this kind of stuff down. Just cut it out and to put it down, or like me, just put it here. But this one is long, I think. But we have, of course, a problem now. And the problem is when you do something like that, we need a forward declaration for all the functions. But with that said, we can make a forward declaration very easy, because now all are collapsed. So, which means now I can just copy this one here. Just this line here is our forward declaration. So I copy this one, paste it here. I don't know if you can copy all instantly. I think we can make this one here too. Let's make it this way. It's even easier. Copy all, place it on top. And now what? Oops, collapse all again. Oh, and now what you can do is just remove this last part here and make a semicolon end. And then you have all the forward declarations for them instantly. That's very handy also. And the question is, wait a minute, why I'm doing this forward declaration at all? And the reason for that is because, for example, like I said, you want int main on top and all this other forward declaration here as well. And this is also very nice. You are working here, for example, this is your working place. And then you say, okay, I have this function, I see it instantly. And we can jump to this other function as well with, we know it, with right click, go to definition, and then they jump anyway down. So they can stay all up. Let's use our shortcut Control M, Control P for open all up. And now you can see this is nice for workflow with an IDE, and there are much more things, nice features. Like I said, if you master your IDE, perhaps you need a special tutorial to understand all the nice features of an IDE. But if you master this, you get better and better. And yeah, that's also very important. And now we can talk about the strange things. So let's continue. So now the functions which I have here down created, you know them probably from my last video. This functions was in the last video, and we have here this ints which are not used, and here I created a new one. Let's see what this new one is, because there is also something happen. And the new one is a return function with a string. We can see, okay, return type is string. I called it functions with many consts, but I have not any consts here because that was my intention to do. But let's change this one to function with a strange behavior. Function with a strange behavior. Now I changed this part with a strange behavior. I copy this one, and of course I have to change this one here too with a strange behavior. It's here. All right, now I have this one changed as well. And okay, function with a strange behavior, I have called it here. Let's change this one as well. All right, so now it should work so far, all and nice. So the question is now, let's go through fast this function again. So we have here this function with strange behavior, and you can see this one is just a normal function call with a reference. So here's my variable, it is a reference, a string reference, and here again I have my variable, which is my parameter, and again a reference and a int reference. And we learned reference here means just backwards changeable. What was backwards changeable again? The caller, in my case here on top, it is okay, I called it in my output. I used stdout, but the function call is here, and the caller arguments, these two are my two arguments, and this two, what you see when I click it, it highlights this one on top as well, which is here the declaration of a string with no name. It's empty. You can see it here. And then I declared another name, another variable, which is just an int variable, and also with 0. And I called it here, right? This is my call place. And then I printed out this this set, my function reference here, and my edge by reference here. So this is just that what it's doing. And let's go on. And this reference means I can change now here these values, even I don't set it here, by reference, which means I just use them here in the body and change it backwards. So my param here I set to coder, my edge param I set to, my edge is now 5, and of course this is a return function. This is the real thing where you normally want it. Here I set this value. I changed the name and edge by reference, which is my string. Normally you want this one here, But if you are using a reference, of course, you set this one as well. So that was a repetition of this reference and so on. But now we will go to the strange things. And let's collapse all again. To train this as well, Control M, Control O, and it looks again much nice. And here is probably something strange. I don't know. Let's see what it's complaining. If it's complaining anything. Okay, no, it is there. Okay, I wrote it probably wrong. Oh no, why I wrote it wrong. Okay, what I can do is just, I copy this name here. And copy here and write it here probably. Alright, that was just my spelling. And it should work now. No, not where it's now. Alright, of course, this one was also wrong. I made again wrong spelling. Okay, this is not the strange behavior. This is just my wrong spelling. That is not that what I wanted to show you. Sorry for that. But let's continue. So let's continue with the real context, which is just let's say strange behaviors. And yeah, let's start. First of all, I open up my let's collapse this one as well. Sorry for that. And let's continue. So the first strange behavior is you probably know const, right? We have talked about a const, for example, a const int. Const word means the variable which I'm going to define here, the value is not changeable. So when I write, for example, const int my telephone number and I assign a value to it, I can't change this value anymore because this const says please don't change this value. And okay, we know this, but interesting is we learned also when you have const, you have to initialize a value, right? And when you read this online, you will see, yes, in C++ you have to initialize a value. The problem is now here, I make again a const variable, which means I have to initialize a value. So let's make a normal const. For example, const, let me show you this one. That if I don't initialize a value, I get a problem. Const int my test number, and I don't initialize a value, right? But interesting is it shows not an arrow here. So when I compile this, the compiler says it's not working, right? And then we can read here on the bottom this my test number const object must be initialized if not extern. Okay, there is an exception with extern, then we have not to initialize it. But in this case, it is not this extern word, so I have to initialize it. And that is exactly this case here on top. So I have to find here also a value. My test number is 45. Let's see, 3. Something like that. And now this will work. So, and we learned also that when we use const as a variable, that makes also only sense to initialize it instantly, right? Because we can't change it later. And that's why the compiler says, please initialize this value while you are creating it. So you can't just use here a declaration without a value, because you can't change it later. That's the reason why you are using const. And here comes something strange. Okay, this rule we know, but what is that? Const std string, and now I write my name, right? And I say again, I don't use a initialization, right? And the problem is normally you say, okay, wait a minute, that the compiler will complain, right? And because just like I talked just right now, the compiler says you must initialize a value, and it makes also no sense to initialize not a value, because this const will not allow you to change this name here later in code. So when I compile this, the problem is the compiler is not complaining at all. For also in this case, and this is a problem, right? This is a strange behavior. We are not expecting this. So at this point, for example, we are questioning ourselves. Wait a minute, did I something wrong, or is here something wrong? In this case, you must read now the documentation why this is happening. Because I don't know it too. You can find it why this is the behavior. But in general, expectation, this makes no sense, because my name I can't use, at least not the normal way. But this is special in programming. Sometimes you find other ways still to use it, and that's why I showed this one here, because like in our last video, I showed you this function here, right? And this function has also this ints without name. We talked ints without name, right? And this without name means you are not using it. So from the logical point, it makes also no sense to have something this, but still I explained there why it's still possible to use them later perhaps, or we have to assign them. And something similar can happen with this one too. I don't know it at this point of time. So you have then to research and check what happens. And one check you can here do is all time this debug. Debug is all time nice. So let's see what happens here. So here the const, it goes in. We show here again on my bottom. Okay, my name at start is nothing. Okay, now I go one step further. Not here. That was not good. Let's see. What was that again? I don't know. Anyway, let's go here one further. All right, we have here a problem even with the bug. So anyway, you can see you have to research this one here. This is not, let's say, expected. This is strange. This is after you learn, for example, the basic about const, that makes no sense, but it can still make sense later. That was one case. And when you find something like that, first question yourself first, because most times you make the error. In this case, probably I made any error here. And then after, when you question yourself, go and research online and ask in forums, and for example, in Stack Overflow forums is every time good. There are many questions like that, and then you find their answers from other people why this can happen or why this not can happen. And yeah, and of course, if we get better, we understand also the official C++ documentation papers, and then we can look directly in this one, which is a little bit more complicated, but this one is perfect. When we are at this point, we understand later why this one will behave like it's here. So that's one case. There is one more strange behavior, and I want to show you this one as well, because this can happen to you too, and then you have a problem. So the next strange behavior is with this function which I talked here at the start. Let's open this one up, and yes, it is our function with this string reference, with my edge reference, and I changing the caller here with this one, and I return even here again a string, and in my int main I have this one. So this kind of stuff I don't need actually right now. So I uncomment this one here because we are interested only in this one function call. And this function call will change these two variables here, because like I said, these are reference and references, and they have here not const. Const means if it's const, I could not change them backwards, but without const, this one will change these values backwards. And after they changed it, you can see what I'm going to do here. I just print them out. right? This is just our what we know as it is here out. And what we expect here is this function here, right, is calling just normal, is using this one as arguments. Okay, I use them as arguments. Here is nothing, here is 0. Then it jumps down, and to this function here, it gets in this one and this one as arguments, and then which is at start 0, and here also nothing, string was nothing, and here 0, and then later this one becomes coder and this one will become 5, and because this one is backwards compatible, which means this one becomes coder and this one becomes 5, and then at the last, after this function is finished, we expect it also returns a string which says I changed name and edge reference. This is all that what we learned already in the thing, but now something strange happens. This call, let's continue, that was just a function call, and then we expect here a new line which says test, and then we print out this one here, and we expect that it says coder at this point because we have changed it with this function call, right? This is so our thinking. And then here it goes on, and then I make again a new line, and let's get rid of this test here, perhaps just a new line, and then I print out the second variable. So absolute normal calls, and absolute, we expect all things normal, right? Now I start this one, and let's see. So I return, so first we see here the return of this function is this one here. That's normal. So I changed name and edge, and we can see indeed that worked. There is no problem. I changed name and edge. That was what I expected. But what happened in the next line is a little bit strange, right? So here we see coder. Wait, that's good. That is expected. So this one was backwards changed. Absolute expected. Perfect. No worry. So let's do one more thing. Wait a minute. 0. What? That's not expected. Why not? Because 0 is my start point, but 0 is actually not that what I backwards changed. 5. Okay, there is something strange. There is something strange, right? So we can test this perhaps not with 0. Let's write here a strange number. Let's write here 11111 and hope perhaps something like that happens. So save this one. And what we see here is, again, it is not backwards changed. So this one is not changing. And this is not expected. So you can say, wait a minute, I made probably a mistake again. And this is all time what you have to do. Question yourself. Most time, the reason why it's wrong is that you misunderstand something like me, or that I used a function wrong. Perhaps I used this one here wrong, and something like that can happen. But to check yourself, use the debug. Well, because the debug is, let's say, a really good helper. The debug visualize what the computer, this compiler sees. And let's use the debug at this point and see what the compiler is seeing at this point. So, okay, I start my debug. At this point, when I hover with my mouse over this one, for example, I know, okay, this is empty, expected. And I hover over this one, okay, this is 111, expected. And you can see these values also here on the bottom. All fine, expected so far. And now I'm here at this line. And at this line, I want to go in. So if you go in, it jumps into this function definition. You can see now I'm here in. And then I go on. So this param here, my param coder is still not evaluated. I have to go one more. So you can see this my name param here is set to coder. Okay, I go on. My param 5 is set to 5. So this references are set like I expected this. So very nice. So far, so good. And I go on, and now I'm jumping out of this function, and I'm back. I'm back where the function was called. And now when I hover my mouse over this one, you can see the set my here is coder. So this tooltip is already referring that what's happening in the back, and that's exactly what I expected. Here is coder. Now I have a hover over this one. My edge reference is now 5, exactly what I expected. Right now, this one is connected to this one. This one should be 5 now, right? Here, the compiler says so. But what happens next is, let's continue. And let's see, we are already there. So there happens something in between. We have not checked them, but what happens is when I hover now my mouse over this one, this output here, we see, okay, coder, perfect. That's exactly what we wanted. But when I hover my mouse over this one here, it says 5. And that's also very good. That's exactly what we expected. That's perfect. So wait a minute. This one says 5, but the output, right, was not 5. So when we check this compiler and check what the, let's say what the compiler sees, it was not wrong. So it was not wrong. Our thinking, our expectation, all was right at this point. But our output is not right. So wait a minute, why it is putting here 1, 1, 1 out? You see, and this is the second strange behavior that makes, for example, for beginners and sometimes also for advanced people, not so much sense, because this is not expected. Expected in this case, all works fine normally, but no, it's not working fine. This one is not an expected case. What I mean with that is, let's close this one. To understand this one, we have actually analyzed this overloaded operator and this stdc out, and that's we skip in this one. But what I want to show you is, normally you worked all fine, and you can test this also if other way. Let's say, okay, this section worked not right. I just uncomment this section and test something. For example, now I write stdc out, and then this one again, but with a special call stdc out. And then what we see is, if I make this one this way, so this one worked. Interesting, right? So actually there was no wrong thing with the function. There was this stdc out work, but this stdc out concatenated here with this overload operator. There was something behind the scene what was not working. This can be a bug. For example, perhaps it is not the real thing, because normally this function should work like I described it, because we expected that this one goes first, it is changed, and the compiler did it change it actually. We saw this one when I run the compiler, that this was the coder, that this was 5, but the output was wrong. And yes, there was an internal, let's say, we can call this an internal, for example, this operator was internal solved in a way it is not correct, right? Perhaps that, perhaps not, perhaps it is correct, perhaps this one is intended. At this point I don't know it, and that means normally you have to research this one and ask if you don't know it for in places who knows this a little bit better, for example, compiler, how the compiler works, this one, or how this operator is overloaded. But as a beginner, that's a little bit too high. But later, when we go deeper and deeper, we will understand this one as well, because we will go for operator overloadings. and to see out more in detail, dive into the function and see this all kind of stuff. But at this point, you can see this one was actually not your fault, because this one would be, let's say, this is strange behavior, but you see, I did just write this one here with uncommenting this one and it worked. So that's yeah, what I want to point out is with this strange behavior is you have to ask yourself first, try to find if you are the one who made something wrong, because you can see all time it's not your fault, because this one is very strange. This function should not work like this one, at least what I think. And so your intuitive way, this one, okay, this one, the other function with this int, with this nameless int, that is described in the official papers. Perhaps this one is also described, who knows? Perhaps I have not found it, but actually this is not expected because the compiler also said this is 5, but the output was not 5. So internally was this one here actually not solved right. Internally behind the scene, this yeah, how to put it out, because the intention of this overload operator was, yes, I won't put it out. All right, I think I talked here much, but yes, you should just get this an idea that sometimes it looks like that you made the mistake, but sometimes it's not really your mistake. You have check first with this debug what the compiler sees, like this strange output. The compiler was did absolute that what I expected, but the output on the screen was not that what the compiler showed. And this is a mistake, and this is not your mistake. This is then anything behind the scene mistake or something like that. And then you saw also with this, yeah, that I could solve this with a special call, because normally this one is not needed, because you say I just use this one and go on. All right, but yeah, keep an eye on this one and ask yourself first, and use compiler to understand what the computer is seeing and what the compiler is seeing. And when you're thinking and your compiler thinking are the same, then most time you are correct, because the compiler determines later what is correct or not correct. And this output was here not correct actually. There is something other strange. All right, with that said, I stop here. If you have any questions or any complaints like all time, write it in the comments, and good luck and bye.